prayer. Holy God, may the words of my mouth, the meditations of each of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. And may you move here by the power of your Holy Spirit to help us in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, I don't often remember my dreams. And I've always heard people talk about, do you dream in color or in black and white? And I honestly couldn't answer that question until this week. I had a dream in the middle of the night, and it was a little worrisome, you know. I was being chased on land, right, by a lime green octopus. Actually, it's closer to Kelly green. You know, it's somewhere in between lime and Kelly green. Because I remember it. I woke up.
That's a Pete Baggett dream.
It's a Pete Baggett dream. Well, anyway, it was like, it was running after me, you know, and it was like, and it wasn't, I had this feeling, it was like, here we go again, you know. It was like I had this dream 1,000 times before, and here I am going through it again, and I'm running from this old lime green octopus that's, you know, got all its tentacles, and it's coming after me, and anyhow, long story short, I remember stopping, and somebody came alongside of me, and they were being chased by a lime green octopus too. And I don't even know who this individual was. And I had to sneeze. And I sneezed, and it was an overcast day. I remember the clouds covered, you know, it was just covered, wasn't rainy, but it was just an overcast, right? Complete cloud cover, like those white pillowy clouds. And when I sneezed, this is hard to describe. There was a face that appeared in the clouds. Poof. It just, for that half a second that I sneezed, it was like the pressure of my sneeze caused this face to appear and then disappear. You know, does that make any sense? Y'all seen those little things where you put your face in the sand and it leaves an impression, you know, it just kind of, that's what it was. It was like the cloud just poof, just, you know, poofed out right there, and it was a face. And it actually had a turban wrapped around its head real tightly. It wasn't a big Arab type turban, it was real tight turban, and it was a face, eyes, everything. And you know what? In my dream, I thought, God is there. God is with me. He's always looking out for me. Even though I don't see him, he's there looking down on me. And I turned around and I started chasing that octopus. And I told that guy that was with me, I said, quit running from that octopus. You chase him. And so we did. We chased our octopus. Okay. And then I woke up and I thought, that was weird. I guess something. I don't know. Anyhow, so, all right. So we're going to, let me go back to this. Okay, so here's Capernaum. You see the little red thing up there? Let me get out of the way before I'm out of the way. That's the Sea of Galilee. Jerusalem, if you can see that Mount Tabor down in the kind of the bottom of the screen, Jerusalem would be way on down below that. Nazareth is over there to the left. Capernaum is there on the north side of the Sea of Galilee. Magdala is over on the west side. That would be where Mary Magdalene came from, the city of Magdala. I actually have pictures. We went to Magdala and saw some ruins there. Anyhow, this is where Peter lived, where Jesus stayed much of his ministry. in Galilee. He stayed there, most likely at Peter's house with his mother-in-law and all them. They all lived anyhow. So here's Capernaum. If you see that structure kind of in the middle, the big kind of whitish, that's the synagogue that was in Capernaum. Of course, the ruins are just partial walls that they've reconstructed from where that they found and, you know, kind of cleared out the structure. The other structure up there on the left that you can see is a church that's been built over Peter's house. Right? They've discovered what they, you know, has been believed and traced back to the, you know, like 1st, 2nd centuries is Peter's house. They found articles in there that had Peter's name on it, like his coffee cup kind of thing that had his name on it. You know, they found clay pots and stuff with Peter's name on it. So anyway, so they built that house, and there's the, you know, partial walls and stuff. Kind of give you, it's hard to picture what the city might look like, but this is a rendition of what it probably looked like. Something like that, a little fishing village there on the north side of the Sea of Galilee. The big structure in the middle would be the synagogue, right? So, so there you go. And this is kind of a shot that if you notice, the roofs were pretty much flat roofs. They dried their fish out there. You see there's a cat. Some of y'all that are looking for a pet, there's a cat, you know, over here on this bottom right-hand side. You know, and people would sleep out there, you know, and when the weather was real hot in the summer, you know, and all, that they might sleep out there, have a little partial cover or something to lay under and what have you. So, and this is the Roman centurion, a picture of what one would look like. And they were over 100 soldiers, right? And this is who we're talking about. He's a Roman centurion. So our distress is the first thing we talk about. I mean, we all are running from a green octopus, right? You know, at some point in our life, they're chasing us, and it happens periodically, you know, and you can label it with different names, you know, depending on what's chasing after you, right? So this Roman centurion has got a green octopus chasing him, right? And it's that here's his servant laying at the house, sick, maybe dying, and you know, we're not concerned. He didn't go into the reason he's concerned. He didn't say if he's, you know, has compassion on him, or if he's worried because it's going to impact him financially, or maybe it's a little bit of both. Well, I don't know. He may be a great servant, you know, and he's going to be hard to replace if something happens to him, he doesn't make it. We can assume that he had compassion on his servant, I would think. But, you know, there's always that little, you know, what am I going to do if X happens? You know, I mean, there's, you know, some of y'all that own businesses and all, you know, you could probably relate to that. You know, yeah, you got some, you love this person and concerned about him, but there's also in the back of your mind, there's like, man, if the worst happens, what in the world am I going to do? So anyhow, and the centurion also understands that he's a Gentile. And Jesus is a Jewish rabbi, okay? And there were strict laws about the separation between the two. Jewish people did not enter a Gentile's house because it was unclean, right? They couldn't do that. So here the centurion is, you know, he acknowledges, he knows who he is. I'm a Gentile. And I realize you can't come in my house. Even though Jesus may have been willing to, right? And he also understands that Jesus came to minister to the lost sheep of Israel. You know, and Jesus has said that he came to minister to the lost sheep of Israel. He didn't come, at least firstly, to the Gentiles. That would come later, right? After he was raised from the dead, and the disciples would end up going to the Gentiles. that was had not yet happened. But the good news is that Jesus understands us. He understands the situation. He's got it, right? And for us, he hears our prayers. He hears them. Just like he heard the centurion. He hears whatever our concern is, whatever our lime green octopus is at the moment. He hears, and he hears the centurion, even though he wasn't a Jew, or might not have been a God-fearing Gentile necessarily. He might not have even been a worshiper of Yahweh. We don't know. We're not filled in on that. What we are filled in on and can kind of fill out is this guy said, you know, he came to Jesus with an authentic concern, and he trusted Jesus to take care of it, right? So, our faith, Augustine says, faith is to believe what you do not see, and the reward of this faith is to see what you believe. You know, that it will come about. You will see the hand of God work if you walk by faith, in other words. And the centurion, and this is kind of language we might have a little trouble following, where he says, I'm a man under the authority of others. You know, and he was just over 100 soldiers, right? There were others that were stacked up all the way to the emperor in Rome over him. And he was basically saying, I'm a peon, really, in this giant cog of a wheel that is the Roman Empire. But I have people under me, and when I tell them to go, they go, and when I tell them to come, they come. They obey my orders, right? And what he's saying to Jesus is, I recognize that God has given you authority here on earth. And I believe that there are angels ready and willing and waiting on your word to go forth and do your command, to honor you and to go and accomplish what you want accomplished. He's basically saying how much, if I'm a little peon in a great big wheel and people follow my orders, how much more so would your orders be followed, because you have all authority. Your authority is given by God. So God is able, y'all. God is able. Give your distress, your lime green octopus to the Lord, okay? The battle belongs to the Lord, right? As we were told in the Old Testament, the battle belongs to the Lord. There's a caveat here. The Jews thought that they were in as descendants of Abraham, right? Because we can trace our lineage back to old Abraham. Maybe, it doesn't matter what we do. We can do anything, and we're saved, basically. We're gonna be in the kingdom of heaven with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob one day. And Jesus is saying, no, you're not. And Paul really kind of fleshes this out in Romans, that Abraham's descendants are those who follow Christ by faith. It's not of the flesh, those descendants. It's the descendants that follow God by faith. That's who's going to be dining with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. So in order to gain heaven, one must follow Jesus by faith. Okay, that's it. Being raised in the church doesn't save you. If your mama and your grandmama was Christians, that ain't gonna save us, right? We have to each individually walk by faith in our own shoes, right? And trust God ourselves and see God's hand at work in our own lives. And the centurion exemplified strong and exemplary faith, even to the Jewish people. And Jesus elevates this guy's faith and says, I haven't seen this kind of faith in all of Israel. To the people that are supposed to be the faithful ones, y'all need to look at this Gentile. He's got faith now. So, all right, our hope. Back in the Old Testament, I may give y'all whiplash here a little bit. Back in the Old Testament, remember Jacob went to, he ended up tricking old Esau out of his inheritance, getting the blessing from Isaac, you know. Him and his mama kind of had a little conspiracy there, and they tricked Isaac into giving Jacob the blessing that Esau was supposed to get. So I don't know about all, you know, I hadn't figured all that out yet. I'm still working on that one. But he ends up having to leave basically for fear of his life. You know, he skedaddled out of there and goes back north to where Abraham came from, and some of his kin folks up north, you know. And he goes up there and he ends up, you know, running into Rachel, you know, and who's one of his kin folks, if you will. Now, I don't, you know, suggest we do that today, but back in the day, that's what they did. So I ain't figured that one out yet either. So anyway, he went back, and he ended up, you know, working for Laban for what, 20 years. He got Leah and Ray, worked for 7 years to get Rachel, and then old Laban pulled a fast one on him and ended up with Leah, right? He wakes up next morning, there's Leah there in his tent, like, what have you done? And anyway, so he gets Leah and then Rachel, and then works another 6 more years, and the Lord says to him, okay, it's time to go back. Go back to where you came from. Go back down there and face your brother Esau, right? Go back down to Bethel or whatever. And so he does, right? And Laban has cut his salary, what, 10 times over the 20 years, and renegotiated and cut him, and yet still Jacob has flourished. And he has had, you know, his flocks, you know, when the deal was, you get all the spotted lambs, bam, all those good strong ewes would bear spotted lambs. When it was streaked, they would be streaked, you know, all that stuff. So he ended up prospering, and he also skinned some limbs and put in the water trough. And I ain't figured that one out yet, because anyway, but he ends up, you know, flourishing in the middle of oppression, in the middle of being taken advantage of and misused and abused and working hard from sun up to sundown every day, and just, you know, everything should have gone wrong for him, but the good Lord makes it go the other way. And so he goes back, and in the end, the way it all plays out, if you'll recall, when he finally meets Esau, you know, after sending gifts of you know, livestock and what have you ahead of him, both groups, one group after another one. He wrestles with the Lord all night. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I'd probably give out about 2 o'clock in the morning. But he wrestled all night with the Lord, right? And finally, the Lord said, you know, he just threw his hip joint out, right? And all that. So there's still some stuff I need to figure. I need to do some in-depth study on one day. How to reconcile all that. Woo! Have you ever wrestled with the Lord? Let me ask you that. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about. You've wrestled with the Lord, right? I've done some wrestling with the Lord. And I'm not saying I won either. So, but it's all right. But finally, when he meets Esau, it's all okay. And they hug each other, and they end up, burying their daddy together, right? And it all worked out all right, and they flourished, each one of them. And Jesus says here, well, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they all had their lime green octopuses, right? They had their trials and tribulations, did they not? I mean, you go back and read the story in Genesis. I mean, it's a drama, right? I mean, we couldn't have written that and fictionalized it and made it more interesting than what it actually was. And Jesus says Gentiles will come from east and west and sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob at the great feast in the kingdom of heaven, right? So it's by faith, It's by faith, y'all. How do Gentiles gain access to the kingdom of heaven? By faith. How do we exercise our faith? Trust God. Yeah. Do we believe that He has the authority to take care of our lime green octopus?
Amen.
Yes, He does. He does. Do you believe that He will get you through your ordeal? Look at Dwayne over here, right? Now, they've been through some stuff, y'all. I mean, y'all been through some stuff. Now, they've been through some stuff too, I mean, and we've all had our octopuses chasing us, right? At one you label and whatever. But God will get you through it. It doesn't mean it's going to be pretty and that you're going to be singing glory, hallelujah all the way through it. I mean, sometimes it's tough. I mean, it can get tough. But trust God through it all, and you will see Him deliver. There is a deliverance at the other end. It's kind of like that old saying, at the end of every drought, there's a rain, right? Well, your blessing is coming. Just hold on. Was it Joel Osteen? Hold on for your blessing or whatever. Some of those prosperity gospel people. But that's true. God's going to bless you. Now, He may not rain down dollar bills on you or $100 or whatever, $100 bills, but trust God and you will see Him get you through to the other side. If the battle belongs to the Lord, why aren't we giving it to Him? Will we trust Him? What is our hope really in? Is it in this world? Is it in our money, our family, or our position? Our hope is in a person who watches over us and never sleeps. Jesus is our hope. Chip and Joanna Gaines, right? We're all kind of familiar with them. You probably don't know that Chip went to college with some of Billy Graham's grandkids. I guess they're at Baylor. I'm pretty sure it's Baylor. And he ended up going and spending a week over with Billy's son-in-law, Danny Lotz, Ann Graham's, I believe, husband, Ann Graham Lotz, who was Billy's daughter. He went with some of those grandkids back home, and Chip says that impacted him more than anything. that he spent some time with Chip, telling him how to be a Christian man, not in the ministry, but in a secular job. How you can still live out your faith and glorify God even in the construction business or the car selling business or the insurance business or whatever you're doing, or teaching school or whatever you're doing, you can still honor God. And he and Joanna got married, and they were pregnant. She was pregnant with her second baby, and they had that Magnolia Market there in Waco, and they felt God telling them, you need to close it. So they listened to God, and they closed that Magnolia Market, and they trusted God. It was hard for them to do. And Joanna says that in the middle of that, she said, God taught me to study the Word and believe it, even when it hadn't been fulfilled yet. I really had to cultivate a place of faith that I never had before. I had to trust Him as He would speak His promise to me, she explained. This trust brought peace, although my circumstance hadn't yet reflected His promise. His word doesn't return void, and God was working in my heart to establish deeper levels of trust that I now look back on and am thankful for. And guess what? At just the right time, a production company heard about Chip and Joanna's home renovation business, and the rest is history. Trust God, you know. Trust God. He will chase those lime green octopuses away, one at a time. Amen. All right. If you'd like to, well, let's stand and sing our closing hymn.